There is a moment someone asks you for something, and before the request even finishes leaving their mouth, the answer is already forming in your chest. Yes. You didn't decide that. The yes arrived before thought did. Most people call this being considerate, being a good person. They wear it like a badge. Carl Jung had a colder word for what you're actually doing. He called it identifying with the persona, and he believed that the person who can never disappoint anyone is not generous. They are imprisoned. What you're about to learn is not a lesson in being more assertive. It's an autopsy of a debt, one you've been paying since before you could speak. And by the end, you'll understand why the most psychologically dangerous act available to you is the deliberate, surgical disappointment of the people you love most. Let's begin with the thing you've never been told about the mask. You were not born with a face for the world. You built one. Every child does. You think you chose your personality. Much of it was assigned. Watch a 4-year-old. They scream when they're angry. They go cold when they're bored. They tell you, with terrible honesty, that your food tastes bad. The honesty gets called rude. And slowly, the child learns the most important survival equation of their early life. Certain parts of me are safe to show, and certain parts get me hurt, abandoned, or unloved. So they build a face out of the safe parts, and they bury the rest. The mask is not the problem. Jung was explicit about this. You need a persona. A person with no social face is not enlightened. They're unbearable, unable to hold a job or a friendship. The mask is a tool, like a coat you wear into the cold. The catastrophe is forgetting you're wearing it, because something terrible happens to the parts you buried. They don't die. They go underground, into what Jung called the shadow. Debt 1. The compound interest on every swallowed no. Think about money for a moment. Imagine you borrow a small sum and pay nothing back. Each year, interest accrues. The debt doesn't sit still. It metastasizes quietly while you look away. What began as something you could have handled in an afternoon becomes 2 decades later something that can swallow you whole. This is exactly what happens to every authentic impulse you suppress to keep someone comfortable. You wanted to say no to the favor. You said yes. Tiny debt. Your friend hurt you, and you told yourself it wasn't worth the conflict. Tiny debt. None of these felt like anything in the moment. That's the trap. The interest is invisible at the daily scale. But the psyche keeps a ledger you cannot see. Jung used a brutal image for what eventually happens to the person who fuses completely with their agreeable mask. He reached back into Greek myth, to the death of Heracles. Heracles is given a garment, a shirt, soaked in what he's told is a love potion. It's actually poison. He puts it on, and when he tries to remove it, he can't. The fabric has fused to his skin. To tear it off would mean tearing off his own flesh. Jung said the persona, worn too long and too completely, becomes that shirt. It grows fast to the skin. You can no longer tell where the role ends and the person begins, and removing it, finally, requires something that feels like being flayed alive. The pull of the mask is stronger than the pull of the truth. It takes a deliberate act of will to override it. Debt 2. The reflex you mistook for kindness. A psychotherapist named Pete Walker, who specialized in complex trauma, noticed that the standard map of human threat response was incomplete. Everyone knew the 3 Fs. Fight, flight, freeze. You meet a threat, you attack it, you run from it, or you lock up. But Walker kept seeing a 4th pattern in his clients that the map didn't account for. People who, when threatened, did none of those 3 things. Instead, they became helpful, pleasing, useful. They merged themselves with whatever the threatening person seemed to want. He called it the fawn response. Walker observed that fawning develops most often in children who face danger from the very person they depended on for survival. A volatile parent, an unpredictable caregiver. For that child, fighting back is impossible. So the child discovers the one strategy that works. Become what the dangerous person needs. Anticipate the mood. Soothe it before it breaks. Disappear your own needs so completely that you give the threat nothing to react to. And it works. That's the devastating part. It is a brilliant adaptation for a child with no power. But the nervous system doesn't file it away as a strategy for that specific house and that specific parent. It wires it in as identity. It becomes the automatic operating system. So 30 years later, you're sitting in a conference room, or across from a partner, or on the phone with a friend, and someone's tone shifts half a degree toward displeasure. And before your thinking brain registers anything, the old machinery fires. The yes arrives, the apology forms. You make yourself smaller, more agreeable, more useful. You think you're being kind. Your body thinks it's surviving. This is why the boundary advice never works on you. You've read the books. You know, intellectually, that you should say no. This is the second debt. You traded the ability to know yourself for the ability to read everyone else. And you've been calling that trade empathy. There's a tell that gives this away, and once you see it, you'll catch yourself doing it. The fawning person doesn't have opinions in the moment. They have opinions that form a half second after they've read the room. Someone says they loved the film, and you find that you loved it too. Someone expresses doubt, and your own enthusiasm quietly evaporates to match. You experience this as being agreeable, easygoing, low maintenance. Debt 3. The shadow learns to use your hands. We established that the buried parts don't die. They go into the shadow and grow. Now I have to tell you what they do down there. Robert Johnson, one of the most lucid interpreters of Jung who ever wrote, described the shadow using an image of ferocious clarity. He said we are each born whole, a complete circle of energy, capable of cruelty and tenderness, selfishness and generosity, rage and peace. But society cannot tolerate the whole circle. So it teaches us, very early, to take the unacceptable portions and put them in a bag. We drag this bag behind us for the rest of our lives, stuffing more in with every passing year of being good. The person who can only be kind has not transcended their capacity for harm. They've buried it where they can no longer govern it. And a buried thing doesn't obey you. It runs on its own. The kindest people you know are not the safest. They're the ones whose darkness is operating without a license, in a basement they refuse to visit. You've felt this in yourself, that flash of something ugly toward the very people you sacrifice for. That exhaustion that curdles into bitterness at the friends who lean on you, the family who needs you, the partner you can never disappoint. You hate yourself for the feeling, so you stuff it back in the bag, which only makes the next leak worse. That bitterness is not a flaw in your goodness. It's a receipt. It's the shadow telling you the debt is past due. Now, halfway through this, we arrive at the thing that should reorganize how you see every good person you've ever known, including the one in the mirror. Because there's a name for what happens when the bag finally bursts. And Jung watched it destroy people. He called it enantiodromia, the principle that any psychological force, pushed far enough toward one extreme, eventually flips violently into its opposite. The mechanism is precise. The psyche does not seek your happiness. It does not seek your success. It seeks balance. And when you spend decades forcing yourself into one-sided goodness, relentless accommodation, the total suppression of every selfish or angry or self-interested impulse, you create an imbalance the psyche cannot tolerate. Pressure builds behind the dam, unconsciously, for years, and then it reverses, all at once. You have seen this. The devoted wife who, at 53, walks out without warning and feels nothing for the family she spent 30 years serving. The gentle man everyone trusted who erupts in a single act of rage that destroys his entire life in an afternoon. The pillar of moral authority whose hidden appetites detonate the reputation he spent a lifetime building. The world calls these breakdowns midlife crises. They say he snapped. She changed overnight. They didn't change overnight. The change was accumulating, in the dark, the entire time. What looked sudden was the dam giving way. Jungian analysts noticed that the people most vulnerable to this catastrophic reversal are precisely the ones with the most rigid, the most impeccable, the most admirable masks. The more flawless the persona, the more violent the eventual collapse. Because the persona demands the constant suppression of everything that contradicts it, and every act of suppression is another inch of water behind the dam. The agreeable person believes they're avoiding conflict. They're storing it, at interest, with a balloon payment due they cannot afford. Consider the physics of it, because the metaphor is exact. A river behind a dam doesn't disappear because you've blocked it. It rises. The water that should have flowed through, day by day, pools instead. And the pressure on the wall increases not in a straight line, but exponentially, until a structure that held for 40 years fails in 40 seconds. Engineers have a grim phrase for the moment a dam goes. They call it the failure cascade. One small breach, and the entire wall is gone, and everything downstream is destroyed by water that had been sitting there, perfectly still, the whole time. The agreeable human is a dam holding back 40 years of unexpressed self. And the people downstream, the family, the marriage, the life that was built on the assumption that this person would never, ever flood, have no idea what's behind the wall. Neither does the person holding it. That's what makes the failure so total. Nobody saw the water rising because the entire point of the persona was to make the surface look calm. And this is the hinge of the entire argument. The reason you must disappoint people is not so you can be selfish or cold or high value or any of the cheap things the internet sells you. It's that disappointing people in small, deliberate, survivable doses is the only known way to drain the dam before it breaks. Every honest no is a release valve. Every time you let someone be displeased with you and survive it, you discharge a little of the pressure. You take a small, conscious payment off the debt, instead of letting the shadow take a catastrophic one when you least expect it. Disappointing people, deliberately, is how you finally look in that mirror. It's the most honest thing you can do. And it's terrifying precisely because the face looking back is the one you spent your whole life convincing everyone, including yourself, didn't exist. So how do you actually do it? You don't start with the people who matter most. That's a mistake that gets people hurt. You start small, the way you'd rehabilitate a torn muscle, with load light enough to survive, heavy enough to adapt. Begin with the disappointment that costs almost nothing. The waiter brings the wrong dish. Send it back, and notice the spike of anxiety that fires when you do, the absurd guilt over a thing that is entirely reasonable. That spike is the fawn reflex, exposed in a low-stakes setting. You're not learning to send back food. You're teaching your nervous system that someone can be mildly displeased with you, and the world does not end. Then climb. Let a meeting end with someone disagreeing with you, and no scramble to smooth it over. Let a text sit unanswered until you actually have the capacity to answer it honestly. Say the sentence that has no apology hidden inside it. That doesn't work for me. With no explanation appended, no justification offered up like a tribute. The explanation is the fawn reflex negotiating for forgiveness. Drop it. The discomfort you feel when you drop it is the exact measure of how deep the programming runs. There's a final turn here, and it's the one that should stay with you after everything else fades. You've spent this whole video, maybe your whole life, thinking the goal was to become a good person, to be kind, to be liked, to give. And none of that was wrong exactly. But it was incomplete in a way that quietly cost you your life. Because Jung's word for the real goal was never goodness. It was wholeness. And those are not the same thing. They are nearly opposites. Goodness is the amputation of half your nature, so the remaining half is acceptable to the group. Wholeness is the terrifying, lifelong work of reclaiming the parts you exiled, the anger, the selfishness, the capacity to say no and mean it, and bringing them under the command of a conscious self. The whole person can still be kind, but it's a different kind entirely. It's kindness that comes from choice rather than fear. It's the difference between the man who can't hurt you and the man who could but chooses not to. The truth Jung spent his life mapping is the reverse. Refusing to ever disappoint anyone is how you slowly disappear, until one day the dam breaks and you disappoint everyone at once, in the worst possible way, at the worst possible time, having never once chosen it. So choose it. In small doses, starting now. Disappoint someone today on purpose and survive it. It is the most loving thing you will ever do, for the people who deserve the real you, and for the self you buried so long ago you forgot it was still down there, waiting in the dark to be let back into the light.